was a scene not witnessed on the streets of Dublin for well over a decade. Men and women in berets, sunglasses, scarves and Green Army-style clothing. But what the cameras did not capture was the 3 gunshots fired into the air by a person or persons unknown as the coffin of Alan Ryan began the journey to the church in Donaghmede. This is the man whose murder has sparked such strong feelings, 31-year-old Alan Ryan from Grange Abbey Drive in Donaghmede. He was shot multiple times in broad daylight last week. The murder was brutal and clinical. The masked gunman shot Alan Ryan a number of times before moving in closer and shooting him again, as this friend and witness outlined on radio today.
Alan probably didn't know what had happened. I think Alan was killed very quickly. He was shot a large number of times, yeah. The fella made sure that he'd killed Alan, you know.
It is a unique event in itself, this killing, because never, as far as I can remember, have organised crime, non-political organised crime, attacked any Republican paramilitary group with such ferocity.
Just months after the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, and while still a teenager, Alan Ryan was arrested in Donaghmede in possession of a loaded gun. The following year, while on bail, he was one of 10 people arrested at a real IRA training camp in Stamullen in County Meath. He served a total of 7 years for both offences. Upon his release from prison, he rose to the top of the real IRA in Dublin. At the time of his murder, he was on bail awaiting trial for allegedly threatening a publican to close down.
He did run his own faction on the north side of the city, had some associates very close to him, and eventually fell out with the real IRA boss in Dublin. He has been running his own campaign there, mainly attacking crime gangs, people who are making profits from drug trafficking and from armed robberies and other criminal activities, and he was insisting that his group should get their share of that.
The so-called real IRA is strongest in Derry, Belfast and Dublin, but there are also members from Wexford to Donegal.
The reality of it is, that most of the RIRA, as they're generally referred to now, is involved in criminality, intimidation, collecting cash off drug dealers, business people, that type of thing.
The man who gave the graveside oration at Alan Ryan's funeral was prominent dissident Republican Colin Duffy, who was acquitted earlier this year of the murders of 2 British soldiers.
It's been a win-win situation for the dissidents because, you know, they get some propaganda purchased from demonstrating a wee bit of power in the streets. On the other hand, had they have been taken on by the security forces, that would have been a propaganda coup potentially as well.
Last Saturday, Gardaí felt they could not break up a show of force by people in paramilitary garb.
If the guards had gone in heavy on a situation like that, well then, where would the guards be? They would have been criticised for overreacting and all that sort of stuff. So no, I believe the guards made the right call on that.
There have been no arrests yet about the firing of shots at the funeral, but a major Garda response is likely. Last Saturday, part of Donaghmede was off limits to many. Roads were closed to traffic, gunshots were fired in the air. The murder of Alan Ryan highlights the dispute between the so-called real IRA and gangland criminals. The show of strength at his funeral raises questions about how Gardaí will now deal with the dissidents.
Barry Cummins there, who joins me now. I know, Barry, you were pursuing an interview with the family. You didn't get that, but they gave you a statement. They've given that to no one else. I know, first of all, they expressed their sadness and shock, didn't they, at the murder? Yes,
Miriam, they do. It's a 6-paragraph statement that they've issued this evening, and they do say Alan Ryan was a cherished member of their family, fondly remembered by his mother, his sister and his brothers. They say his murder was a devastating blow, one from which they will never fully recover. They say they can only try to rebuild their shattered lives and try to make sure that Alan Ryan's daughter grows up to know that she had a father who loved her very much.
OK, now in the statement, I think they also say that he was an active Irish Republican and therefore the funeral was a fitting tribute. But the Gardaí go further. I mean, they're pretty certain he was in the real IRA, aren't they? Absolutely, and a significant figure within the so-called real IRA in Dublin. And going back to the late 90s when he was a teenager himself, and he served time in Portlaoise prison up until 2005 for real IRA activity. At the time of his murder, he was facing a charge relating to allegations of threatening a publican to close down.
but given the paramilitary display at the weekend as well, it speaks for itself that he was regarded as a significant figure in the real IRA. What I would say about the statement from the family, they don't mention specifically the gunshots that were fired in Donaghmede at the weekend or the people who were seen in paramilitary-style uniform. They don't mention that in any way. But what they do say is that Alan Ryan's manner of his laying to rest was a fitting tribute to the best ideals of republicanism. They say Alan Ryan would never have apologised for his beliefs while he was alive, and they, his family, have no intention of doing so on his behalf now that he is dead.
Now, they're very critical of both the Gardaí and the media. Have you got a reaction from the Gardaí to that, and what is it that they say in the statement? Absolutely.
Half of this statement refers to the Gardaí and the media. Deeply upset at the Gardaí from the moment that Alan Ryan was shot dead in Donaghmede, that photographers were able to take photos of the scene, and some of those photos of Alan Ryan's body were reproduced in some newspapers. The family are upset with the Gardaí that effectively that was allowed to happen. Now, I did speak with the Gardaí who say that it's not their job to stop photographers doing their job unless they're hindering a crime scene or being an obstruction in any way. There may be an issue about editorial standards for certain newspapers, but the Gardaí are defending themselves. I do know that the family have written to the Garda Commissioner today to outline their concerns and to make a complaint. I think the Gardaí have been saying as well that it's open to the family if they wish to go to the Garda Ombudsman Commission.
Also, there's no mention of the drugs gang in the family statement, and yet so much has been said and written in the past few days about that.
Absolutely, and it's the major line of inquiry for Gardaí as they look to find the killers of Alan Ryan, that he had, and in the real IRA, they had come into contact with these criminal gangs in Dublin, and there had been major disputes. Alan Ryan himself had been questioned about certain attacks on certain criminals. It must be said he was released without charge, but that is the main line of inquiry that Gardaí are pursuing as they seek to identify his killers. I should say within the statement as well, there's much detail in this. They do say, the family, here in the middle of the statement, they do say, as a citizen of the Republic of Ireland, Alan Ryan's murder must be fully investigated and those responsible brought to justice. There's much else in this, but that's one line that stands out.
Okay, thanks. I know you've written a blog on our Primetime website and you've attached the full statement, haven't you?
I have. It's
straight after
there.
this programme. Okay, thanks very much, Barry.